Let's talk a little bit about the procedure, because people forget from year to year. I hear all these wide accusations about, well, it's a Rolling Stone magazine Hall of Fame and this and that, and
well,
can we
on the nominating committee for more than 20 years, and Jan wouldn't have me in the magazine if I had a gun to his head. And I probably wouldn't be in the magazine if you had a gun to my head.
Right. No. So I think we need to.
So we can get. There are a couple of people from Rolling Stone, as there should be, in every version of the committee, which did change shape and get a little smaller this year.
Can we talk about that at all?
Well, I mean, you just say that it was a perception that it was too big, and we were spending a lot of time just naming names and then voting on them, and then we weren't having enough of a discussion. And the whole process, it's actually, this is one of those moments where it's unfair to a given individual who everybody, or almost everybody, slams all the time, because it was his perception, but that's not anybody's business outside of the committee, so I can't talk about it.
Okay, that's fine.
I think that's a broad enough hint. Whether you want to go out to dinner with somebody or not is irrelevant if they perceive something and help you make it better.
Right. Well,
and this is the first. This is a little slightly different approach, and I think it's a much better ballot than the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think so too.
Last year had a very good result off a relatively weak ballot, I think.
Yeah, I do too.
This year, it's much more difficult for the voters to make a mistake. And before we go any farther, let me say this, okay? This is a hard thing to say, because I have a real commitment to this institution, right?
Right.
And I think it was a wise and important thing to create it. But the fact of the matter is, it is the only Hall of Fame in the world that convenes a group of experts to make its ballot and then gives the voting over to people who know less than a smidgen of as much as the people who are in that room.
Right.
It's an insipid process. It really is, and it's been given the first Rock and Roll Hall of Fame classes, if you want to call them that. The first couple of years, there were 10, 15 people who got in. I mean, what are we going to do? Say yes to Chuck Berry and no to Buddy Holly?
Yeah. Right.
But it's not like there isn't the same wealth of some of the people who are more obscure and some of the people who are more controversial and keeping the tent as big as it needs to be is a continuing problem. But in the end, doing it at 5 people a year it's completely frustrating. And it takes something that could be really, really great. And because they pay for the event with a TV show, I guess, I've never been able to figure it out on any other basis, that tail wags that dog every year.
Right.
And it's kind of heartbreaking because, one of the things that happens is simple. It's people die.
Yeah.
Darlene could have died without getting into the Hall of Fame. I see it happen to people. This has been such a holocaustal year for great musicians dying that's really foremost in my mind. Mm-hmm. Everybody's getting older. It's not just those early British invasion bands who have turned 70. The hell, the early British invasion bands are worrying about 80.
Right. Yeah.
And it's a few years off, but it's not. It's going to happen.
Yep.
If you were born in 38 or 39, it's going to happen. Sam Moore will be 80 this year.
Wow.
In just a couple of weeks. So you're going to start losing people that you shouldn't lose without honoring them while they're alive.
Right.
And the longer you wait, the fewer people who actually remember how great something was. And I'll just use, because they're on the ballot and because it's been an ongoing conversation, and because it's the strangest area where the Hall of Fame's inductees are weak is hard rock bands.
Yep.
And the notion that Deep Purple, who are a great band by any definition of rock and roll, who didn't just make, people say, well, they made a riff that was the most distinct. They made record after record. So much that, I know that I took them for granted for way too long. And there's a bunch of people like that, whether it's somebody whose style is pretty much forgotten and discarded, like Mark Bolan, or who's not on the ballot, to the best of my knowledge, has never been on the ballot, or it's somebody but who was the spirit of rock and roll. I would say that in historical terms, one of the luckiest things that ever happened to David Bowie was Mark Bolan's car crash. I don't mean that to say anything mean about David exactly, but Mark was just something extraordinarily special. And, when you've got a process that won't even let you get around to that fact, because there are other even bigger problems that have to be readdressed.
Right.
It's, like I say, it's frustrating. It's not because anybody wants it to be frustrating. Then you got the whole problem of, there's been a continuing, and this is something for which radio needs to be taken to task, in particular the rating of the genuinely evil Lee Abrams period. This continuing confusion about what the relationship between white rock and black rock ought to be, or is. And make no mistake, you have to talk about it like that. They have the same route, and they traveled at some points. The paths have diverged quite extremely, and then again, they always come back. They always come back together. The musicians always know, what the connection is. You never have any trouble explaining that to a musician, or at least not a musician who's worth talking to.
Exactly.
But so these are all the limits within which that ballot got created. But people, I say this partly because I'm tired of pretending a whole bunch of things. Well, I was always tired of pretending in general. It's the Cream Magazine person in me wants to just shake people up a little bit and say, hey, there's right, there's wrong. Yes, we will never agree with anything the way we all agreed on Elvis. Yes, the same thing should be true of James Brown, and it never will be. And that we need to reckon with. We also need to reckon with the fact that people think they know the history of rock and roll, and I will tell you right now, 750 people are going, that's what I was told, or read somewhere, are going to get this ballot. There are not 750 people in the world, on the surface of the earth, who can adequately comprehend what has happened since 1955. It's just simply,
that's right.
Have some. I don't mean, because God knows if you stick me in with a bunch of electronic acts, even going back to, where those Britpop things from in the Duran Duran period, or there's all kinds of nicks and crannies and sometimes rivers that missed me.
Right, of course, miss all of us.
Yeah, nobody's, nobody can here. I remember talking to John Landau, who's one of the original rock critics who's still alive that I'm the closest to, and him saying to me at a certain point, well, it's all going to be different now, and we were up to about 1966 or 67, And I thought about it as a person who didn't much care for what came out of San Francisco, give or take Sly and Creedence. And yeah, it's going to be different. We're not going to agree the way we used to, right? And that's what he was thinking about too. So when we talk, yes, I'm on the nominating committee. No, I am not a person who agrees with everything the nominating committee does or with all the ways in which it's compelled to do its job. But at the same time, I'm very proud to be part of it, and the institution, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, is not a bad idea. It's a very good one, because somebody needs to do this, and we need always to be criticizing ourselves and each other, and having people from outside the process doing the same thing. And the only thing I can add to that is I believe this to such a point that after about 6 months, I realized that I should have been supporting KISS getting into the Hall of Fame all along, for the simple reason that now all those idiots have to shut the fuck up about it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
It was. I went, oh, really? This all dies down? Oh hell, I should have voted for him.